When people speak about becoming spiritually awoken, what do most of you think about that? What do you think it means? What do you think you benefit from becoming spiritually awoken? Turn off, pause the computer, pause this video, think about that. You know, what does your mind lend itself to thinking when we look at what it is to be spiritual? What's the gains? When we look back through thousands of years, as much as we possibly can, and we see what people have wrote, and we hear about what people's cultures were like and what they considered was the nature of the universe, and we come upon scripture like the Upanishads, Hindu scripture, and we come upon philosophical literature, we come upon some variety of spiritual passed down information like the Australian Dreamtime, like the Indians in South America, how they've passed down information in relation to what they consider spirit is. But when we look at things like the Akasha, the information that's supposed to be in the ether, and before the realms of the internet with Wi-Fi, most people would have really scoffed at that. But now with the advent of Wi-Fi, when we know, we don't know, we've been told that information is all around because it's being transmitted via radio antennae. Or these days it's coming down fibre optics. But if you're on Wi-Fi, then the information, the signal's coming from a transmitter, isn't it? So information's in the air. So the Hindus, thousands of years ago, weren't too stupid when they said that everything that is to be known is in the Akasha. When we ask ourselves, how did they know that? I'll leave you to think about that one for time being. Then when these native Indians from down in Peru, the ones that make the ayahuasca, when they're asked, how did anybody discover out of a possible 2,000 plants that 2 of them were going to marry up to make this incredible potion? What's the chances of discovering the actual method and the compatibility? Because one of them gives rise to these hallucinogenic visions, and the other one enables the stomach to allow the passage of these. One of them, I think it's kind of like an inhibitor or something, because without this bark or vine, whichever one it is, then the stomach will kill the possibility of this chemical being absorbed. But with this bark, then it allows it to do it. How did they know that? Well, they say that spirit told them. What I'm getting to here is, people, that what I know about this world now is mostly what spirit has told me via my intuition. Now, here's a curious thing. I've collected rocks for all my life, and I love rocks, and I'm a real tactile person. I love to go to churches and to cathedrals and, you know, feel the carvings made out of marble and sandstone and all that sort of stuff. And when I go to an old building made out of stone, got to feel it. There's something about it. I'm reading something, and I feel an energy. And I feel when I go to old buildings, castles and things like that, I feel as if that I'd lived many lives as somebody that lived in those buildings. And you can go, oh, why is that then? You know, well, I don't know, you know, if you've got a leaning towards reincarnation, all that sort of thing, then it's possible. And so I love rocks. I'm always collecting rocks. Everywhere I go, I'm always touching rocks. And it's a mystery to Mr. Nobody, because he doesn't touch anything. I'm touching the bark on trees, I'm picking everything up, I'm touching everything. I'm a very tactile person. Why do I do that? Well, because I gain information. I gain the knowledge of things via that tactile sense. It's like a braille to me. I'm reading something more, I'm feeling, I'm absorbing something more. So I'm writing in this particular chapter about why I love these regions that I go to, these two forest regions. Well, I'm so partial to them. I'm so attracted, I'm so drawn. Why is it? Well, they're ancient forestry, for one. They have had very little human contact other than humans passing through. But even in some of these regions, there's areas which are forbidden for the human being. And it's just given to nature. And when you go into these realms, you feel a real certain something, and it's a connection with the life force, the cosmos, God consciousness, whatever is devoid of the human pollution. And when we look now at what the leaders of the world are trying to do, they're trying to create many regions which is out of bounds for the human being, because they feel it too. They know what it's all about. Human energy destroys the essence of the natural world, because mostly they take from it, destroy it, and don't put anything back. And why I love these forbidden regions is because they haven't even been trampled on by the human being. And when a branch falls from a tree, it lies there until it rots into the ground. It's not messed around with at all, or touched or removed. And so I'm up there and I'm speaking about these pre-Cambrian period rocks of 650 million years. Now, I read about these rocks in Charles Darwin's Origin of Species, which is an 800-page read, and it's very deep because it's a scientific manuscript. And so, because an enormous amount depended on the content of that, because it was a big deal. It was, you know, stealing the autonomy from God at the time. This book went to print in 1860, and so of course, you know, it was a real big deal. And I've got to eat some blackberries at some stage in a bit, people, but I'll get through this video. So these rocks are very powerful, and I'm like, well, why are these rocks powerful? Because when I touch them, when I'm next to them, I feel a connection, and I feel, here's the crux of it, I feel as if they possess the knowledge of at least the beginnings of Earth, if not the entire knowledge of the cosmos. Why? Well, because they came out of this stuff which the cosmos is made of, originally starting with gas and chemicals and all this sort of stuff. But then, you see, I think, why am I feeling like they're alive? Why am I feeling that there's something there? There's a spirit pertains to those rocks. It's because, ladies and gentlemen, there really is. How do I know? Because my spirit, my intuition, the greatest intelligence in the cosmos, is telling me Then, when we do a little bit of a Google search and we look into what actually is it that stores memory as far as our technology is concerned, well, it's electronic tape, it's silicon chips, it's silica, silicon, quartz. In actual fact, there is a whole range of minerals which you can store information in. Water even stores information in itself. In one section of my book, I put in a small paper from a scientific, I don't know what you call it, it's a scientific paper, and it says German scientists have made the discovery of the century, and it goes on to say that they've discovered that water has memory. Now, lots of you will probably be aware of that in some shape or form. You wouldn't really know the details, I wouldn't think. But some of you may have heard how some scientists put a flower into water, and then every drop of the water contained an image of the flower. Well, that isn't true. But what is true is when the scientists put a flower into a batch of water, and then they took the little, microscopic bits of water out of that batch, and then they put them under a microscope, they discovered that that water had changed since the flower had been put in it. In its constituents, in its configuration, there was more information within those drops of water than drops of water taken prior to the flower being put in it. So what the scientists have concluded was, having laboriously tested this over and over again, when they put things into the water, doesn't matter what they put in, the water would reconfigure itself, and it would change, and it would retain that change. And what it was doing is it was remembering. It was changing its configuration into a new configuration premised upon what it had received. You see? So can you imagine then? It's like our brains. If we read a few lines of something, then our brain changes its configuration. The water in our bodies, the electricity in our bodies, microscopic particles of silicon or silica or quartz, it's all in here, people. What is it that retains our memory? We don't know what memory is, and it isn't necessarily given to one part of the head. You mean, they reckon it's this Broca part here, but then when people have that blown away, then different parts of the brain take on that job. And that's the curious thing about the brain, because you can't narrow down to any specific region about anything really, because when that's gone, the brain then will supplant it. They will use another part of the brain for the same job. So when I'm feeling rocks and I'm feeling that there's a spirit there, I'm not wrong. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that incredible? Isn't that genius? What enables me to know that there's spirit, information, people? It's just another word, but it's alive, it's conscious in some way. And this is what many physicists are saying these days, that the universe is conscious, and photons are conscious. That's why the double slit experiment is such a head mash. And so everything, I would think, contains memory. If water contains memory, everything contains water. Even rocks, at some level, they've got some sort of microscopic trace of water within the minerals. But even if they don't have, then the actual silica or silicon or quartz or even granite, I suppose, because they've got different levels of these substances in them, they would use or be utilized as memory. So I've only looked into it briefly. You know, I'm by no means knowledgeable about this, but if some of you guys are, if you know how computer chips receive knowledge, how they store it, how does that work? Do scientists actually know how it works? How does a lump of silicon take in like a whole book, for instance, if it's written? How is that possible? And how can it store it and it not being corrupted? That's a very curious thing, isn't it? So what I'm saying here in this video then, in relation to why it's very important that we become spiritually connected, because our intelligence grows exponentially. And I was saying in this paragraph, and it's a little bit demeaning, but it's fact, and I'm dealing with facts as much as I possibly can. I'm saying that when we look at primates, we can see that the primates' awareness is vastly less than ours. Now, they would know that it's raining and it's hot or it's cold or this, that and the other, but they've got no self-awareness, have they? Because if you sit them in front of a mirror, they don't have any inclination at all that that image is a pretty close semblance to them. And you know, I don't want to start saying, oh, that's their image, because we get into these metaphysical things, but you know, it's like, you see, with children, it's kids about the age of 18 months, they have this self-awareness whereby you stick a sticker on their forehead, and when they're in front of the mirror, they'll look in the mirror, and then they won't try and pick it off the mirror. They'll go straight to their heads, because they've got self-awareness, you see. That comes about 18 months. And it doesn't come about at all in primates. So this consciousness, this awareness, when we look at a child 1 year old, all of a sudden it gets this awareness of self. Well, that's a massive leap, isn't it? And so what I said in my chapter is that, well, we have something similar happen from a human being not being self-aware to all of a sudden overnight they have this level of self-awareness. That's one leap. Another leap is from being a primate to a human being. Another leap, which is very similar, is to being a regular automaton to being a spiritually awoken person. Now, when we spiritually awaken, then our awareness vastly increases, and we have supernatural tools. We can get involved with telepathy and, you know, telekinesis and, you know, prophecy and you know, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on. And of course, you know something of this stuff from, you know, being a human being for all these years. People with special powers, why do they have powers over and above others? I think you'll find that they have a vastly increased level of awareness. And so what I'm saying is, with my intuition now, my state of cosmic awareness, it enables me to know things that scientists have only just started to discover. Now, 5,000 years ago, the Hindus were speaking about the Akasha. And you know, there are lots of philosophers around the Platonic, Socratean sort of period, which were speaking about atoms. I think the guy was Democritus or Democritus, or I think something like that. Speaking about everything consisting of very, very tiny microscopic particles. How did they know that? Well, you know, it wasn't just a guess. It was some level of vastly heightened awareness, and the information comes to us via our intuition. How do geniuses do whatever they do? Because their minds are much more of an antennae for receiving this information. And so, as I go through my life and I learn from this thing, and from the mind, and from the ether, and from the Akasha, and from all the information in books and on the computer, all this information is being compiled, and I'm putting things together which are really, it's extremely exciting for me, because just little things like that, when we look at, well, what I've been deriving from my intuition for a long time, then when it fits so very, very well with what scientists are doing now, extracting, or they are infusing memory into stone of lots of descriptions, and so we accept it very readily. If I said to you, you see, that I've got a rock here and then it's got memory, you know, because you've not had your awareness opened up to it. But now, having explained this, you start to think, oh, well, maybe it's possible, but you'd need to hear it from somebody else, because you wouldn't give me the credit, because I'm just the awake and brave and I don't know fuck all because I've not got a PhD. But if you heard it from a PhD, then you'd accept it. But I'm telling you, before you've heard it from a PhD, guys and girls, I'm telling it that when you hold a rock in your hand, it's got, I wouldn't say all the information, but it's got an enormous information from the very, very beginnings of the creation of the universe. The memory is in there, and one day we will be able to extract it. When we get as smart as we think we are, we will actually be able to extract the life story of it. Because look, if we had the technical know-how, we could extract the life story of water, because water carries with it the memory of every single thing it's come into contact with. So if you can imagine one drop of water which one day comes out of the sky, well, it's been on Earth for millions of years, and it's been around and around and around and around, and it's been consumed by a billion different creatures. It's you know, been used by plants and all this sort of thing. It's passed through you know, a gazillion creatures, and it's had a gazillion lives that it's lived. And so if these scientists are right, then the water has retained that memory. It will be able to tell you, or you'll be able to extract from it once you can read the code of every single place it's been. Listen, people, you're only hearing this here on the Awake and Brave. You've not heard this anywhere else in the cosmos. If you have, I want to hear about it. Let me just reiterate. What I'm saying is that every single thing contains memory. You see, because the constituents of this thing are minerals and water. And we know that minerals hold memory. We know that water holds memory. So the molecules in this have the memory of the Big Bang. From the very, very beginning to present, every single atom is going to have the memory, if we're going to be able to read that. And I think that I think I should at least deserve a Purple Heart, an MBE. I think I should be awarded an honorary position of some description. I really do. A Nobel laureate. I think I should be. Anyway, I'm going to investigate that a little bit more. I'm going to investigate the technology perspective of how many variants they have actually tried to infuse memory into, and what qualities they need to be better at holding memory. Apparently quartz is pretty difficult to infuse memory into, but I think, you know, well, they've managed it to a degree. But things like silicon are easier to do it. Well, do what? What actually do they do? I don't know what the process is, and so I'm going to look into it for that a little bit more. But it's curious when I'm writing about the things I'm writing about coming from a spiritually evolved creature. Well, we can very easily see then that we didn't need technological advancement to know things about this world. And so if somebody says to you that they know God exists, or they know that this, that and the other, I'd be inclined to believe them, to be fair, people, because one day it isn't going to turn out to be so crazy. It's just that our minds have been so limited for so long, and we've been poisoned that we shouldn't believe this and we shouldn't believe that, and we've got to trust the science, trust the science. You know, it's like these magicians now have took reign of the world, and they want to blind us with their science. You see the tool, people, because the vast majority of people know nothing about science, and science is such a specific thing. To know about biology is very, very specific, as opposed to chemistry, or as opposed to theoretical physics, or all these sort of things. And so how many people really know about the science? How many of us knew about these things in recent times, beginning with a V? You know, nobody knew about it. And even the best of the best, which made hypotheses, well, so far none of them have come true. And so it seems nobody knew about it. Because the world is so variable, the human being is so variable, and one size just doesn't fit all. There's so many considerations to take into place. So the next time you see somebody caressing a stone, a rock, or a pebble, you might just get to thinking that there's more going on than meets the eye. Because by holding that pebble, they're probably downloading some of the history of the cosmos.